Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to Rats on Film, the show where a bunch of film rats talk about and rank movies. Today, we're talking about one of the all-time animation greats coming off the back of his second Oscar win, Mr. Hayao Miyazaki. On the show with me today, I have Jordan.
Hello.
Jonnie.
Hello.
The creator of our amazing logo.
Oh, thanks.
And I am your host, Xander. Welcome to the show, everybody. And so today we're going to be doing a ranking list for all of the Miyazaki films. This is kind of a tricky one because the three of us are big fans of all of the movies, so it's going to be interesting to see how we actually rank them. I think no matter what we put on the high end or the low end, we love all 12 of the movies that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think this is not an enjoyable group of movies to rank for me personally, just because I think they're all so amazing, and I think Miyazaki is the best, that I don't like even comparing them. And I hope that anybody out there listening doesn't change their opinion on anything based on what we say.
This will probably be one of the more polarizing episodes, I feel like, because I feel like no matter what we say is a favorite, somebody out there is going to be like, how dare you not put this one as the number one, which I think is very valid for these.
Yeah, I genuinely think you can't go wrong with a favorite Miyazaki movie.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will be offended by what we rank highly. It's going to be what we rank lowly. It's
Yeah,
going to be the opposite of how other lists.
For sure. All right, so let's get into it because there's quite a few movies to get through today. So we're just going to go in chronological order. So the first movie that he ever directed was Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro, 1979.
I watched this movie a couple of years ago for the first and only time, but I don't know anything about Lupin. I know that there's a lot of content with Lupin and comics and other shows and movies, but I thought the movie stood alone on its own well. I liked it.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun movie. Maybe like a more enjoyable, like fun-free watch than a lot of the other Miyazaki movies. Like, it's just like a goofy, fun time.
I was going through his filmography today, and I was trying to think about the way that his movies fall into different groups, and I kind of feel like he has two modes. I'm generalizing here because obviously there's more nuance to it, but he kind of has the fun and games movies, and he kind of has these really deep existential ones. And I feel like this one and Kiki's and stuff like that are the fun and games ones, and this one is probably his most... It's kind of just like an action comedy heist movie.
Yeah. I think to me, one of the standout parts of this movie is the car scene is amazing. The car chase scene at the beginning is such a good sequence. The animation is so good. It's just great.
It has that great quality of animation that I love, where I'm a big Looney Tunes person, and it has that defying of real world physics, but in this amazing way that can only be done in animation that just feels so great to watch.
The characters are all super fun in the movie. And Lupin's just an enjoyable protagonist.
It is probably the most different than all the other movies. It feels the least like the style that he ultimately came to have as he went on, which makes sense for a first feature. I feel like that's pretty true of a lot of directors, honestly. There's this Hitchcock quote that I really like where he says style is self-plagiarism, and you can't really have style until you've made stuff before, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, in this movie, we get to see the very beginnings of him finding his own style from a feature storytelling perspective.
You know, something I was going to say at the top of this, and because I'm about to make this comment, is I was going to say, if you're so inclined, I feel like a great drinking game for you for this is to see how many times we say the movie is beautiful, because I don't know that I've ever watched a Miyazaki movie and not been just floored by the visuals. And even this one, it's not quite the same style as some of the other ones from an art style perspective. Again, it's an existing character that they're using, but there are still some really, really cool shots in that film.
Yeah, there's iconic shots that you definitely remember. Them sitting on top of the car in the middle of the field with the big clouds behind them. That shot is burned in my mind.
Yeah, he loves clouds. He does some really cool stuff with clouds in pretty much all his movies. All right, so right now, top of the list, Castle of Cagliostro.
Number one. Will it stay there? Stop listening now if that's your favorite.
Second feature is Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind. So I'm a huge fan of Nausicaä. It's pretty high up on the list for me. One of the recurring themes in a lot of his films is the, humans versus nature themes, and I'm always particularly inclined to some stuff like that. And the world building is really cool. I love the toxic jungle and the weird like steampunk vibes that he's got going on here. Her little hoverboard, all that kind of stuff is just super, super cool to me.
It has like elements of Dune in it, which
yeah, sure.
It's kind of like his Dune. Like, I don't know, the technology and the future and how humans interact with the environment, and trying to take like a science fiction point of view on that.
I think it's crazy too, because it is one of my favorite movies of his too. Again, early on in his career, only his second movie. And really, it's not that complicated of a movie. Like, all the ideas are super, I would say, like, boiled down and streamlined, but there's still so much depth to the story and to the meaning of everything. And you could really see what it is that he as an artist cares about and what he wants to portray to the world. And it's really well done and powerful.
I think this one is also it is the first in chronological order where he uses a child as the main character. Like, Nausicaa's a teenage girl, and I think we see that continued throughout his filmography, but just seeing the power that children have and the world through children's eyes, whether they're young children or, you know, teenagers, it was like the beginning of him doing that too.
A lot of his films revolve around youth, and specifically the youth rebelling against kind of these systems that are not right.
Yeah, and sticking up for something.
Again, we were talking about how beautiful the film is. Like, the world building thematically is amazing, but also just visually, it's stunning.
Sick clouds again. Yeah, the toxic jungle, the way that looks is cool.
The toxic jungle is like beautiful, but like, how is that beautiful? You know what I mean? Like, he does such a good job. There's that scene where she goes into the jungle and she finds the eye lens of one of the giant bugs, and she's using it as an umbrella underneath raining soot. In description, it's disgusting, but then in the movie, it's so amazing and beautiful. And I think that's a big part of the Miyazaki movies, is like seeing the beauty in the world.
I think obviously, since this is his first non-prior IP movie too, we start to see how he designs characters, and I think that is also seen throughout all of his films. Like, he has a very distinct style of character and human, but then also can create all these other insects and spirits and everything else that he makes in all of his movies that are so outlandish, and still when you see it you can recognize that it's him.
The mustache mask rules.
Yeah, there are some sick mustaches in Miyazaki movies, huh?
Yeah, but we don't need to waste time, you know what I mean? The mustache mask alone is gonna put it above.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote for this one above Castle. Jordan?
Yes, same.
Okay, so unanimous. This is now number 1 on the list, and Castle of Cagliostro in the number 2 slot. So moving on to the next one, Castle in the Sky, 1986.
He's real into the castles at the start.
He loves castles.
The
2 castles, 2 out of 3.
I mean, Nausicaa's got a castle too. She lives in a castle. I'm surprised you didn't call it Nausicaa of the Castle of the Valley of the Wind.
Thinking about Castle in the Sky again, and Castle in the Sky feels like Breath of the Wild just totally took all of the elements of Castle in the Sky to make its style and aesthetic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he has, like you mentioned it before, he has a lot of steampunk in a lot of his work that shows up. Like, not everything, but it does show up quite a bit. And also, he's heavily involved with nature, and nature is always an important aspect of all of his films. And I feel like this is one of the ones where it really is nature and steampunk meeting each other. Yeah,
the robots from Lapida feel so much like the Guardians in Breath of the Wild, and there's the whole talking about like the nature meets the technology. Honestly, you said it, but literally the whole end climax of the movie when they actually get to Lapida, you know, the villain is trying to access the technology and it's all overgrown, and the robots that are still alive are basically just caring for the nature that's grown there. And even though the people have gone, the world has lived on. That goes back again to Nausicaa, talking about, you know, Nausicaa kind of takes place in this vague future after some apocalyptic event, but nature has regrown, and this one is a different version of that, where this super advanced civilization existed and went away for some undisclosed reason, and nature continued to kind of thrive there.
Life finds a way.
I honestly think that this is a really good movie and not one that gets talked about that much because his filmography is so good. But especially when you look at his earlier work, I feel like this one is him honing in on making a complete movie. It feels like this is him learning what he learned on the first two movies and then making something with it. You know what I mean? Like, I could very clearly see elements of both of them from Nausicaä having a very direct meaning that you're trying to convey, and also having this emphasis on nature and flying things and creativity. But also from the Castle of Cagliostro, you could see a lot of the animation and fun is in there from that. Like, the scene on the train tracks is very reminiscent of the car scene. I was literally gonna just bring that up. Yeah, and that scene's amazing. Like, I actually like love that scene. The animation is so good. That's the best
scene of the movie, I think. Yeah, it's so good.
It's like actually such a good scene.
I love the Dola pirate gang. They're insane.
Yeah, they're great.
And that whole sequence is so fun. And yeah, it does feel a lot like the car chase from Lupin.
It's like almost 50-50, like 50 Nausicaä, 50 Cagliostro.
Well, yeah, because honestly, the Dola pirates kind of are analogous in some ways to Lupin, where he's like this master criminal, right? But he kind of has like a heart of gold. He's likable.
And again, we have kids being kids.
Yeah.
Which I
think you brought that up too.
I think it's important to him. Yeah.
It is.
Like, I don't know. I feel like and you mentioned, Jonnie, like creativity. And I think Miyazaki always shows creativity through kids who have like most of the time the biggest creativity.
And kids who have like a drive that you can understand how like their upbringing and how they are children, but who want something better in life and want something out of life. And I feel like as an audience, you can really connect with that more than somebody like Lupin.
I don't know. I was reading somewhere that a lot of children's books use protagonists who are orphans because they don't have like parental influences, and kids who read those books, even if they have parental influences or guardians in their lives, they can relate.
Yeah, I can see that, because in a way, like, orphans are not tied to anything, like they are their own person. And this movie's cool too because it's just kind of a classic fairy tale. Not a lot of his movies are classic fairy tales in that old school animation way, but it does seem like this, he's mixing what he knows from the other movies, but also in a way attempting to be like, let me pay homage to classic animated movies.
Yeah, honestly, that's an interesting point. It does, of his filmography, it probably feels the closest to, you know, the Disney movies of all decades. Honestly, I was going to say a specific decade, and then I went, I guess all of them. You're right, pretty classic fairy tale tropes. I don't know, his movies are cool because there's something about them where it doesn't feel like anybody else could have made them.
Well, also a great thing about Miyazaki, which I really admire, but also am, on the other hand, astounded by, is that he has a way of making his movies where, like, I guess not for Nausicaä, because like you said, he had made a manga of that beforehand, but that they start making the movie and they start fully animating the movie before they even figure out all the story. He goes in with an idea of something, but then he's like, let me create these characters and let's see where it takes them. And you could feel that in his movies.
I mean, his movies feel character and idea driven sometimes, not plot driven. You're in this world with these characters and you know the setting and you know kind of like the theme and the goal of what he's trying to tell, but all of the time it's not like an A to B plot or like the hero's journey plot.
Honestly, maybe that's one of the reasons that you like them so much, Jordan, because I know
I'm a character person.
Yeah, characters like your biggest thing in movies, more than plot.
But a lot of his movies do feel very character driven. And it's the relationships between the main characters. Almost all of his movies have like one or two characters, and the relationship between those two characters is what
it's always believable,
drives
the relationships.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, where are we putting Castle in the Sky?
This may be controversial, but I'm going to say above Nausicaä.
Above Nausicaä for you, Jonnie?
See, we just talked about it for a really long time, and you know, it's hyping me up on it. It's hard. I don't think I would put it above Nausicaä. I think I would put it just under Nausicaä, because I think it's probably maybe more fun than Nausicaä, but I think Nausicaä hits harder and sticks with me longer.
Yeah, no, I'm with Jonnie. I love both. Again, Jonnie said this at the top.
Get outvoted. You know,
yeah.
Sucker.
We love all these movies, but yeah, Nausicaä, Jonnie said it sticks with me a little bit more. There's something more just that I find more fascinating about that world and those characters than Castle in the Sky, but Castle in the Sky is amazing too.
All right, so it stands Nausicaa's number 1, Castle in the Sky is number 2, Cagliostro, number 3.
That's right. Fan favorite now, My Neighbor Totoro, 1988. This is a weird one for me because I feel like this is the Ghibli movie, like this is the Miyazaki movie that is a large percentage of people's movie that they think about. I think it's probably this or Spirited Away for most people is the one they think of when they think about it. But I saw this one so late that I was already familiarized with a lot of the other films before I ever got to this one. So I don't associate this one as strongly with him and Ghibli as some of the other films, just because there's things I saw earlier and they hit me earlier.
I think there is something with Miyazaki films and all Ghibli films where they're they like get into your heart and they get into your soul, honestly, and they stick with you more than a lot of other movies. Like, I mean, I think a lot of animated movies are like that, but I think a lot of Miyazaki movies are like that in particular.
I think it's also like Totoro just has the vibes. The vibes are there. The characters are great.
Kappas rules.
Yeah. The world is just so cute. All the characters are cute. If you watched it when you were a kid, you were obviously drawn to it. If you watch it as an adult, like it's still cute. It's you maybe the plot and the storyline, it's not as meaningful as a movie like Nausicaä or like The Wind Rises, but like the vibes are good. It's cute.
Another character movie though, like you were saying, you're absolutely right. And focus on two girls, two sisters, their relationship with each other and their relationship with the natural world. So kind of a coming together of a lot of the different elements we were just talking about in the early ones.
Well, and the plot honestly is really heartfelt and it's really nuanced. There is a lot going on in the background. So I really do think there is a lot to get from it from people of all ages.
Yeah. This one too, I think I said at the top where I said I kind of feel like he's got the existential movies and the fun and games movies, and this is definitely in the fun and games category to me. And I love a good movie that's like that, and you're just watching characters. It's very slice of lifey.
Yeah, and I do think this movie has to do with humans' relationship with nature also.
Yeah, and imagination, and this idea that when you grow up, the world makes you less imaginative and also less in touch with nature, I feel like.
And also more in touch with the tragedy of the world. But if we were making a ranking for the best opening title sequence, this would be number 1.
I meant to bring this up earlier, but I forgot because was going to be something that I felt like was going to come up on a lot of them. Joe Hisaishi, so underappreciated as a composer. He did all of them except for Castle of Cagliostro. So all the music in all the movies is him.
And you know what? I don't remember a single song from Castle of Cagliostro. But every other one I do. I seriously can do a song from every single one.
Every movie, every score is a banger score. They're so good. It's so impressive. So I feel Jonnie brought up the opening song. I'm just gonna give a general shout out to him as a composer throughout, just so we don't have to keep saying it for everyone, because I think every single score rules.
He's like very loved by people who love Ghibli movies, but he should be recognized as like one of the best film composers of all time.
For sure.
In my opinion.
For sure. All right, where are we putting Totoro, guys?
For me, it would be 3rd.
Yeah, I'm between above or below Castle.
Yeah, I could go 2nd.
I'm a Castle in the Sky girl. I'm a Castle in the Sky
I also
girl,
like Castle in the Sky. I also think it's good.
Oh, I meant of Cagliostro. It was either 3rd or last for me.
Oh, last? Oh, I was between 2nd and 3rd. So that means it would be 3rd.
Yeah, okay. So 3rd now. So the list right now, Nausicaä, Castle in the Sky, Totoro, Cagliostro.
Honestly, it hurts. Making this list hurts me physically and emotionally.
This one's going to feel good. Kiki's Delivery Service, 1989.
Oh, yeah. Pop it at number 1.
Yeah. This is my favorite.
Yeah, this one is first or second for me, easily, of all time. This is going to come up on this podcast all the time, but the vibes are immaculate. They are the best. I love a coming of age movie, and this is one of the all-time best coming of age movies, I think, especially like as a kid when I saw it, because I saw this one earlier than I did Totoro, but watching it as a kid, but even as an adult, and just feeling that experience of going out into the world on your own, even as someone who's like still currently navigating it, I always just feel like the movie hits for me on so many levels.
Kiki also feels like a real person.
Yeah,
I was gonna say the same thing.
Watching Kiki on screen, I'm like, that is me. She has the same emotions I do. She's not an early Disney princess. Just do it like she's a real person on screen, and I think that's great.
I fully think she's the best protagonist out of all of Miyazaki's protagonist. She is very nuanced. She's got flaws. She has everything you would want in a main character, and she's completely relatable to honestly, I think everybody. I think everything she does in the movie too is just very relatable and very obviously fantastical because she's a witch. But I think the decision to make her a witch and make her be able to fly and have these magical powers, but then just making her be in very mundane everyday life situations, just trying her best to like make it through the world, is honestly so well done. You don't lose the magic, but also you really can relate to her and you want her to succeed.
It's amazing filmmaking that you can feel so much about a character growing up, living on their own, making mistakes, learning from them, and doing their best from, like you said, the mundane of regular life.
Also, this was one of the first movies that I ever watched where I was like, I need the food. I need the bread. I need to eat the food from this animated movie. Okay, not that, but the bread.
Hey, don't make fun of it. It's the grandma's recipe.
I don't eat fish.
Well, you're just like that rude little girl.
Okay, number one.
No,
number one.
Okay.
I mean, it literally is my favorite Miyazaki movie, my favorite
so
Ghibli
good.
movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to talk about it forever, but I think the ending is amazing too. Like, it builds up to this climax that I think is so well earned. And to see her succeed and make friends, and it's like really, I don't know, so satisfying as an audience, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Also, I love the aspect of this movie that is that she has like almost like an artist block or like a moment of depression when trying to like do her best, because I think that's also something everybody goes through, and the way that she like overcomes that in a very natural way, not in a magic way. It's not like 1 second she's just done with it. She loses her flight because she doesn't believe in herself and she has like this mental block, and then she goes out with her friend and like refines her drive and her creativity. Like, it's just so relatable and so realistic.
I could listen to the score every day.
We do listen to it quite a lot.
Yeah, it's so good.
So Kiki, Nausicaä, Castle in the Sky, My Neighbor Totoro, Castle of Cagliostro. All right, Porco Rosso, 1992. I'm going to say this. This one is super underrated. That's how I want to start
Porco
with
Rosso
this.
rules.
This is the last, other than The Boy and the Heron, obviously. This is the one I saw last. And I'll be honest, people never hyped this one up. I thought Pig Who Flies a Plane doesn't sound that cool to me. This movie's awesome.
We haven't mentioned it yet, but like Miyazaki's obsession with planes and aircrafts is
Don't know
super
how we haven't
prevalent in this
mentioned it.
movie. And it's in a lot of the other movies too. Like, it's in Kiki's, it's in Nausicaä, it's in Castle in the Sky, it's in all of those. And I think it's really something that defines him as a filmmaker, but also something that is showcased amazingly in this movie.
This movie is another one that has some of these anti-war messagings in it. I think Nausicaä is kind of the first time you see it, and then it's not really super prevalent in the ones in between, but then this one kind of gets back into it. And there's a lot of really interesting theming that they do with comparing men to pigs, which is just a really great device with the setup that they used.
And also, the whole part of him being a pig is, so he fought in World War I, but all of his friends who he went to war with all died, and he was the only one who lived. Just a really powerful metaphor for the survivor's guilt in war and what that could do to somebody, and how he sees himself as a pig.
Yeah, and I think that him just being a pig is also not only the way that he sees himself, but how the world sees him and treats him after having gone to war and come back.
The pirates in this rule too. We talked about Dola's
they're
gang,
great.
but the pirates are so funny in this. The opening sequence of this is amazing, where the pirates kidnap all the little girls.
And they're all just like
So
little
funny.
shits.
Yeah, they're climbing around their plane. They're like, "What's this
Yeah, it's
gun?
so
What does
good.
this do?" It's so good.
This might be one of the better balances of the most fun and the most serious, you know?
I feel like this one is misleadingly deep. Like, I think a lot of people don't see how deep and serious and painful this movie is, but it is. It's all there.
Okay, speaking of painful, where are we putting this on the list?
I think it goes after Kiki.
After Kiki.
Ooh, high.
I was going to say after Nausicaä.
From like an enjoyment perspective, I really enjoy this movie. Like, I would like to watch this movie over and over again. But then it's like some of the other ones, it's hard to knock down because I think they're so powerful and so well done. And not that this one's not well done. I don't know how to explain it.
I'm changing my vote after Nausicaa.
I was almost just
So
about
third
to
place
agree
for
with
me.
you. But I'm okay with after Nausicaa.
Okay, are we in consensus about that? That's my vote after Nausicaa, third place.
Sure, yeah.
I had to
Sometimes it's hard to differentiate what you enjoy the most with being like, oh, but this is an amazing piece of art. It's just like sometimes people, when they're ranking stuff, they're like, I know that this is objectively the best, but it's not my favorite. You know what I mean? People do that all the time.
Yeah, but this is subject.
Yeah, the Rats don't do that. Can the Rats tagline be objectively in our opinion?
Yes, and it should be.
All right, so objectively in the Rats' opinion, Kiki, Nausicaa, Porco, Castle, Totoro, Cagliostro. Up next on the list, a big-time fave, Princess Mononoke, 1997.
That's next?
Yep.
Ooh, I love Princess Mononoke. I think it's an amazing movie. I think it's like, I mean, just talking about the stuff that's his strongest work from an artistic standpoint, I feel like this is his strongest artistic movie.
All of the forest spirit stuff and everything surrounding the mysticism in the forest is amazing, and all of that imagery really sticks with me every time.
Controversial opinion. I have a lot of respect for this movie, but I don't
Holy
love
shit.
it.
Don't
Hot take
love
has
this
arrived.
movie?
I don't love it, and I can't really put my finger on it, but I did watch it a little bit later in life, and it was hyped up for me beforehand, and I was really expecting it to be more of a Nausicaa type, like, girl empowerment movie, and it just wasn't, which is fine. That's not what it was made to be, but I don't know, it didn't stick with me after I watched it.
I do get what Jordan's saying, where Princess Mononoke, the titular character, is a pretty secondary character in it, which was surprising for me when I watched it. So I get the surprise and the defying of expectations around it.
And that's not the only reason that I don't love it. I don't know. It's not one that stuck with me after I watched it. It's
No, I
definitely
guess
not
that's
a movie
fair.
I didn't like. I just didn't love it. I mean, I feel like almost all of his movies, I'm like, after I watch them, like, I love it. Like, that's one of my top movies ever, period. And
I mean, I
this
say
one
it's
was
fair,
just
but
like,
I'm shocked. I'm shocked to my core. I honestly, like, think that this is one of the best ones. When I think of my favorite, I'm like, oh, I enjoy Kiki's the most, but then this one is so well made. Like, I think his magnum opus of a film.
Wow, high praise.
I think before, when I was talking about his unorthodox story structure, I think that it's best showcased and to its best effect in this movie. You do really feel like you are going through this journey and meeting these different people and meeting these different point of views, but it's not really clear what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Jonnie said that the art of this one is amazing. I think this one does have maybe the most visuals that stick in my brain. And then also, I talked about this with Nausicaa, but I do have a soft spot for his environmental messaging stuff. It's something that I care about, and I like the way that he uses his art to express different ways in which humans and nature can coexist.
I feel like I need to rewatch this one, honestly.
I feel like you do
because
too.
I have only seen it once.
One thing I like about Miyazaki movies, and I was kind of touching on it before, but he doesn't make his villains so outwardly villainous. And I think that this is a good example of that. Like Lady Eboshi, she is kind of evil, and she's this war lady, and she's destroying nature, and she's building iron, and the iron is what is killing the forest spirits, right? But also at the same time, she is like creating a safe haven for women, and she's giving them livelihoods, and she's helping all the lepers. Like, she's not a straight up bad person. We're living vicariously through the main character, and he's going out and he's seeing good and bad from both sides. Because even on the nature side, you have like good aspects of it, like the wolves and Princess Mononoke. And the boars are just going to war, and they're not willing to talk things out. You know what I mean? Like, you have this back and forth, and you're living vicariously through the main character. You find that it's not about one side defeating the other side. It's about living together in harmony. You know, I think it's really well done, honestly.
I also think that in general, the villains of Miyazaki movies are some of the best villains because they are all justified in their own minds. And even when he portrays like actual war and stuff, I feel like he has a very clear stance on how he's portraying these people, but the people themselves are just people with opinions and beliefs that make them do the things that they do. And that is actually scarier than when people are just all bad for no reason. Because when people have beliefs that make them do terrible things or destroy nature or destroy human beings or whatever, like, that's scarier.
Okay, I'm going to say where I want to start this one because I feel like I'm in the middle of you guys. We can vote up or down from here. I'm going to put it below Nausicaä, above Porco Rosso.
I'd put it above Nausicaä.
Maybe one above Totoro.
One above Totoro.
I love Castle in the Sky.
You do love Castle in the Sky. Like, no. I'm not even against that. I just wasn't expecting Castle in the Sky to be.
If Castle in the Sky is one fan, it's me.
Okay, so does it go where I say then? Since you guys both, one of you said above, one of you said below.
I could accept it being below Nausicaä, even though I'm pissed. But I'm just going through my grieving stages.
But just think about how good all of these movies are. Just keep reminding yourself that
deer's face, though, the deer god.
No, it's incredible.
Yeah,
face.
that's
the deer god is
sticks
incredible.
In my head too.
Yeah,
and he walks on the
water.
water.
Blood consumes the land. Yeah.
Princess Mononoke's design is amazing. I think the visuals of that movie and the themes and the message are good. Something about it just didn't click with me the first time I watched it. So I'm due for a rewatch.
I want to reiterate, this is objectively in our opinion, and also all of these movies rule. We love them all. This is, even though this is difficult, this I feel like is the spirit of what I want this show to be, because I want to talk about movies that we love and talk about them in positive ways. And even though we're ranking them, which can be painful, we love all the movies and we're excited to talk about art that we really like.
Honestly, talking about them makes me want to rewatch them. So.
Yeah.
What's next?
This is going to be a big one. Spirited Away, 2001. Now, I said at the top of the show, this episode would have come no matter what, but one of the reasons we're doing it now is he just won his second Academy Award for The Boy and the Heron, which we'll get to eventually. This is the first time he won an Academy Award, Spirited Away, 2001. Yeah, this movie it's wild. It's the first one I ever saw. Is it the first one you saw too, Jonnie? I feel like in my memory it's the first one we watched.
Yeah, because it used to be on Cartoon Network or something.
Yeah, it was on Cartoon Network. This, I think, is probably his movie I've seen the most, because when we were kids, it was on all the time. We watched it every time it was on. Like, I don't think, if we ever saw it on TV, we always watched it. It was one of those for us. This one is kind of like Mononoke. There's a lot of imagery that's really just burned into my brain. No face, eating, the parents turning into pigs. That haunted me as a child. There's so much cool world building that goes on here.
Yeah, this movie's amazing. Traumatizing and horrifying as a child. But I think that adds to how successful the movie is, because as a task for the main character, who is also a child, to overcome, this is maybe one of the most daunting ones.
Again, though, like I mentioned before, like, she loses her parents because they become pigs, and then she has to have a job. Like, she starts working. She has to be autonomous. She has to help save her parents. It's about a kid coming of age.
So it's another one too that focuses on a relationship, her specific relationship with Haku, and that has that kind of guardian angel, the spiritual guardian angel thing, where he's the river spirit that's looked over her in the real world, and now he's looking over her again in the spirit world, and this idea of being on your own but not ever fully being on your own.
Also, No Face, incredible.
Yeah, he's so iconic.
Rules.
He's probably the second most iconic Ghibli Miyazaki character after Totoro. But I liked what you said a lot, Jordan, about how she's thrust into this environment and then she needs to work and be autonomous on her own. She's put in this literally awful, nightmarish situation, and Chihiro has to not lose herself and not lose the goodness in her heart. Also, maybe Miyazaki's most creative film from like everything in it.
Which is saying something, because almost all of his films are very creative, fantastical.
We said earlier, a lot of them feel like they couldn't have been made by anybody else.
Yeah, and this one definitely has almost all of the elements that we talk about in the others. Just the character design.
And the characters themselves, like we talked about in some of the other films, how his characters are so strong and the relationships are so strong. I think that similar to like how I was hyping up Kiki, I think Chihiro is also one of the best protagonists of all of his films. Her relationships with all of them, Haku and No Face, and even a smaller character like Lin, it really adds to the film. And the spider guy,
Hey, sick mustache again.
Yeah. But her relationships with all of these people, I think, is what makes the film so successful.
Where would you put it on the list?
I mean, it's tough for me because I would put it really high, but I also see now we're getting to the trouble too, because I like Princess Mononoke better personally.
But you like this better than Nausicaa.
Yes, exactly. I like this better than Nausicaa, but worse than Mononoke, so that's kind of weird.
Yeah, but you're in the confines of the group opinion.
I guess I would put it under Mononoke at fourth.
Yeah, that's where I would put it as well, I think. Jordan?
I think I would still put Porco Rosso above it, but I'm okay with putting it where you guys put it.
You know what?
Oh my god.
No, I can see the argument for Porco Rosso.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that one. But I do really like Spirited Away. It's amazing.
Johnny's getting mad.
I know.
No, do what you got to do. No. I'm not trying to intimidate anybody. I'm just living my life, and I'm an emotional person. And if I make noises and I sigh, you can't hold that against me. You can't let that sway your opinion.
This middle area is so hard to distinguish them. I probably just arbitrarily put one over the other when I think they're about the same.
And Spirited Away shouldn't be in the middle area. But, if it is, it is, that's where it is, I suppose.
All right, I'll put it under Mononoke.
Justice for Porco.
Justice for Porco. Justice for Spirited Away.
I love Porco Rosso, but Spirited Away, I do think it's more impactful on me.
The guy came out with Mononoke and then Spirited Away back to back.
Yeah, that's so impressive.
It's insane.
That's
and
actually
Jordan's about to be even
crazy.
more impressed because her
Number
favorite's up now. Howl's
Number
Moving
one.
Castle, 2004.
I mean, it's not gonna be number
All right.
one.
Jordan, you can start on this one because I know it's your fave.
I mean, it's just my favorite. The design of the castle is amazing. Yeah. Howl is such a unique character. His design is amazing. His outfits are incredible. Sophie's a great character. The fact that she's old Sophie it's just so good. I've actually read the novel that the movie is based on for this and Kiki's, and they're both books. You can see that the idea was in the book originally, but Miyazaki definitely made both stories his own. And I think the moving castle is in the book, but the design of the moving castle is just so cool. Calcifer is an amazing character. Again, the food, I want it. I don't eat meat, but I want the bacon. Just my favorite. The vibes are so good, and I want to live in that world.
So we talked about this with Castle in the Sky, where Johnny said that he felt like Castle in the Sky was Miyazaki's version of a straightforward fairy tale. I feel like this is him doing that again. I think he's playing into those tropes and then going a different way than you expected. How is the prince, but he's ultimately the one that needs to be rescued, right? You have the scarecrow who then at the end is this guardian angel.
I love the scarecrow. Scared me so much as a kid because it's so ominous, but he's so cool.
This has another kind of repeated theme from Spirited, where Sophie, she starts young, gets cursed, becomes old, and then you're having this weird version of the coming of age again, like this subversion of it, where she goes out into the world and makes things work. She's already working because she's working in the hat store at the beginning of the film, so it's not that she's not working, but her status quo has kind of changed and she has to figure out how to adapt to her new life that she's thrust into. And she goes and she fucking takes care of business. She cleans the shit out of that castle. I love the subversion of thinking that Howl is the powerful one with magic and with all this influence, and he, in the beginning of the film, he feels like he knows what he's doing and she's going to him for help because she had this curse put on her, and the twist that he's actually the one who needs her help, that is awesome to me.
He is crippled by vanity and appearances, but she, on the other hand, who is dealing with that the worst because of this curse, she's handling it better than him and stepping up.
Yeah, and I think it's just a comment about appearances and aging in general and how she just kind of copes with it and he can't.
The vanity is something that kind of cripples Howl from being strong and standing up for the things that he believes in as strongly as he could, and Sophie is very much the opposite.
Wholeheartedly agree. Also, Merry-Go-Round, the song, so good.
I was just going to say, this movie has the best song of all of the movies. If you were to pick one, I think this is the best one. And the movie is super charming. A lot of his movies are charming, but I think this one in particular, all the characters are so charming.
This is going number 1 for me. I'm sorry, but...
Okay, number 1 for Jordan.
One thing I will critique about this film, I really like this film, and actually earlier on in my life, I think it was one of my top favorites. But one thing I will critique is I kind of think this film is trying to do too much. The messaging of it gets a little bit muddied because there's stuff about war and there's stuff about appearances and aging.
The pacing of it isn't his best. I will say that. I think the first 2 acts are pretty solid, and you kind of get what's going on. The third act is a bit rushed.
Yeah, a little bit. And it is such a charming and like enjoyable film. Like, I'm not trying to be negative about it, but I think when comparing it to the other ones, I like how a lot of the other ones, we could be like, this is what this film is about. What a powerful message. While this one, I think it's juggling a lot.
Okay, Johnny, so where are you putting it on the list? Jordan said number 1.
Honestly, just on my own, based on our list right now, I'd put it under Porco.
I like Howl's. I'm a big fan of it, and I think I would put it above or below Mononoke, I think. So how are we going to come to this agreement?
You can split the difference if I'm putting it under Porco and Jordan's putting it number 1.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. But honestly, I think I would probably edge it towards above Mononoke. So
I mean, if that's what you really feel, you can do it. I'm punching air. I'm punching the ground. I'm punching the walls. I'm punching myself.
You know what? I'm doing it. He's not intimidating me this time.
Wow. The film rats are
I'm
fighting.
not trying to intimidate anybody, but I'm allowed to have
Despite
emotions.
all my rage, I'm just a rat in a cage.
I wish that could be our theme song.
I'm a rat in a cage.
The current list: Kiki, Nausicaa, Howl, Mononoke, Spirited, Porco, Castle, Totoro, Cagliostro.
All right, let's go.
This is
Next
me.
one.
Ponyo.
Ponyo.
This is also a banger song.
Yeah, it is.
I love Ponyo. I think Ponyo's a super underrated one.
I like Ponyo. I personally feel very similarly about Ponyo and Totoro, and I love them both. They just don't go as deep as some of his other movies, but in some ways that's better, depending on what mood I'm in. But I feel very similarly
I would agree
about
with
the
you
two.
that it doesn't go as deep as his other movies, but in terms of his like having a big filmography, it is nice to have those movies, you know what I mean, where it's a little more like, I think this is the coziest movie of his, maybe out of all of them. Hot take, I think this movie has the best visuals and best animation out of any of Miyazaki's movies, period.
High praise.
I mean, the animation of this movie is like actually magnificent, and also they do color pencil backgrounds, which none of his other movies do. I think a lot of people don't even notice. We haven't even talked about the backgrounds. We've talked about how the movies are beautiful, but they have really intricate, amazing backgrounds in all of his movies. But they did a different style for Ponyo, and I think it looks amazing. And the scene with Ponyo running on the ocean waves and the mom is driving the car home, I think is like one of the best animated scenes. Maybe the best animated scene out of all the movies.
That scene is, you know, every one of these movies kind of has something that's just etched into my brain, and that is the one from this film for sure. I mean, Ponyo's just super, super cute. Just to repeat ourselves a little bit, it's focused on the interpersonal relationship of 2 young kids and about both of them finding their place in the world and standing up for themselves and what they want out of life and being strong in their convictions. I think messaging like that is powerful for kids.
Yeah, I think comparing it to The Little Mermaid, I think taking out the adult romance arc also eliminates some of the weirdness from The Little Mermaid storyline. Like, I love The Little Mermaid, I get it, but like I also understand.
The climax is ultimately kind of the same as The Little Mermaid, which is interesting because the prince has to kiss Ariel to break the spell, and the little boy has to say that he loves Ponyo, but it's not a romantic love.
No, it's friendship.
It's a friendship, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is honestly so beautiful, and like, that's so much more heartwarming than The Little Mermaid. I also really like The Little Mermaid, but like this movie is so much more heartwarming. And a childhood best friend, there's something like beautiful about that too.
Mm-hmm.
The design is just so cute too. Like, Ponyo is so cute, and her morphing, like the way that her body changes, is just so cool. So where would you rank it?
I would put this one above Castle, below Porco Rosso.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to say also.
I would have said 1 below Castle because I love Castle in the Sky, as I've said before, but I'm okay with where you put it.
So, all right. Kiki, Nausicaa, Howl, Mononoke, Spirited Away, Porco Rosso, Ponyo, Castle in the Sky, Totoro, Castle of Cagliostro.
Jordan, you're basically at this point, you're like a moat because you're... giving your all to defend a castle.
I want to start on this next one. The Wind Rises, 2013. Honestly, this might be my favorite. It's this or Kiki's. I said Kiki's before, and that's accurate. I love The Wind Rises. I was talking to you about it a little bit earlier, Jordan. This one's so interesting to me because it's his only one that's based on real life. I know it's kind of a amalgamation. It's a book that he adapted and a real person, and he kind of combined elements from both. The thematics of this movie, just this examination of the ability of human beings to imagine and create, but then the tendency of human beings to take that imagination and take that creativity and harness it for the wrong reasons, I think is just one of the most fascinating things to look at about human beings of all time. And then coupling that with this character who really just has a dream, can't achieve it because of their eyesight, and then finds another way to pursue that dream and does it with just as much passion and just as much heart, and really tries to get everything they can out of life and have that sort of tainted by the reality of the world. It hits me so hard every time I watch it.
I think the dream sequences really elevate the movie a lot. Because it's a movie based on real life and loosely based on a real person, it is very grounded, more grounded than any of his other movies by far. I think that has the potential to lose some of his Miyazaki magic because it has to be grounded, just given the subject matter, but he really found a good way to sprinkle magic into it through these dream sequences and also really support the plot and the characters' wants with that as well.
And in some ways it's more magical because it feels so grounded that as an audience member, you recognize the characters. You're like, oh, these are people, and like their dreams are so magical and meaningful that so are mine. He lives in Tokyo, but he is able to dream and create, and even though his creations lead to things that he didn't dream of, which is so sad, but he still is a part of this world and his dreams become something beautiful.
Just that bittersweet kind of resolution.
That is so interesting because this movie was made to be his last.
Yeah, true.
Now, I know that he made The Boy and the Heron. It's a weird message to leave, you know?
But you could see how it relates to like his whole work too.
Yeah, it's just the messaging of having a character who dreams of something and just putting everything that they can into that dream, despite all the obstacles in front of them, despite all of the world pressures around them. I love that message.
But that's what makes it successful, right? Because anybody could make a film about a historical figure's life, and it could end up being, lifeless, to be honest. But since he has a personal connection to this, the idea of being a creator and wanting to create something beautiful, and you can feel it through the film, and it makes it a lot better.
Okay, where do we want to start with this one?
I'm going to say Under Kiki.
Under Kiki.
I agree with Jordan.
Really? This movie's low for me. Even though I like it,
I love this movie.
I think it's hard to explain. Like, I think it's really well done, but in a weird way.
It's your Princess Mononoke.
Yeah. Well, it's just not what this sounds weird. It's like not what I want from him. It's not that I don't want it, because I'm happy it exists and I think he did an amazing job. But when I'm reaching for a film of his, this is not the one I'm reaching for. I'd probably put it under Ponyo.
Under Ponyo, yeah, that is low for you. Yeah, this is my favorite or second favorite of his, so I'm with Jordan. I'll say Under Kiki's okay with me. What do we think then for this split the difference? Do you think Under Howl's, Jordan, or Under Mononoke?
Under Howl's before Mononoke.
Under Howl's before Mononoke. Of course you would think that.
I'm not feeling connected to this list.
2 versus 1. We gotta weight it.
I know I shouldn't be complaining so much because my favorite one is in first, but also I will continue to complain.
All right, last one, guys. Let's finish up. One of the all-time greatest animation filmmakers of all time, Boy and the Heron, 2023. His most recent film, Oscar winner. Only the second.
Show up. He didn't give a shit.
Only the second 2D movie ever to win Academy Award for animation.
both him.
That's
Both him.
true. I guess it started with Shrek, right?
Yeah, Shrek
Yeah, I mean,
won the
Beauty
first
and the
one.
Beast was nominated though for Best Picture,
It
wasn't
was, right,
Yeah.
but it did not win.
Oh, true.
What do we think about The Boy and the Heron?
I really liked this movie. I went in without many expectations. After I watched it, I wanted to rewatch it, and I haven't, but I feel like it was very existential. It was very reflective,
Definitely.
which is to be expected from someone's last film, which he also said that The Wind Rises was his last film, so who knows, but what presumably will be his last film.
I've heard he's working on another one.
Okay, well, his
I
most
heard he was
recent
too.
film, I feel like it was very reflective.
No, yeah, I agree with that. It's a really interesting watch, this one, for me, because I've seen it twice now. I had very similar reactions both times I watched it. For me, my interpretation of the movie is it really is this exploration of just kind of like the ugliness and the difficulty of life and the choice of everybody to live on in spite of that and not give up.
It is. I think it is his densest film he's ever made, and it makes me wish, like Jordan said, that I had seen it more than once. But I also loved it, having only seen it once. I honestly think it's similar to The Wind Rises and similar to Spirited Away. Like maybe those two combined in a way, like which sounds reductive, but I don't mean that in a negative way. Yeah, I think it's really well done though, and I like how it's talking about such serious subject matter and really thinking about his career and his effect on the world as an artist, but in this very creative and more subtle way. He, as an artist, has a lot of issues with the real world, like the way people have affected nature. He hates war. Throughout all his filmography, we've talked about a lot of the things that he's been trying to say with his movies. And then at the end of the day, though, here we are, and there still are a lot of problems with the world, right? And I think him as an artist reflecting, was it worth it to make these movies? Did I have an impact?
Yeah, this movie reminded me a lot of Petite Maman, the French film where the girl goes and meets her mom as a child. It's a good movie, though. I recommend it. I bawled my eyes out in the theater watching it.
Yeah, it's a sad one.
Boy and the Heron didn't make me cry, but it did make me very reflective and kind of like existential. At the end, I was like existential but hopeful, which I think is something that Miyazaki always does well. But I definitely was feeling it like, what is the point? But the point is to exist and to live. You're not gonna have perfection, but the point of living is to live.
The longer you think about it, the more it impacts you. And there is something to be said about that, being successful, you know, it sticks with you.
I think me personally, I would probably say that this one would go above Ponyo.
I think above Porco. I'm going to move mine up. I'm going to move mine up under The Wind Rises, above Mononoke.
Under the Wind Rises, above Mononoke.
The hate for
Johnny,
Mononoke is crazy.
Johnny, where are you putting it?
It's not hate.
It's hate.
It's respect.
I'm taking it as hate. I put it under Porco.
That's where I would put it as well. So are we going above Porco to split the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Amazing filmmaker. If he's done, he has an amazing breadth of work that I will love forever. If he makes more, I can't wait to watch it. So, the Rats on Film, objectively in our opinion, list for the films of Miyazaki. Starting from the bottom, The Castle of Cagliostro. We've got My Neighbor Totoro, Castle in the Sky, Ponyo, Porco Rosso, The Boy and the Heron, Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, The Wind Rises, Howl's Moving Castle, Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind, and The Big Cheese, Kiki's Delivery Service. We will be awarding The Big Cheese to the number one film of every list going forward. Johnny, are you mad?
Yeah, a little, honestly. But, like, I think that, like I said at the start, that, like, this is not something I like to list because I just like all the movies so much.
All right, well, thanks for listening to Rats on Film, everybody. Please follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Letterboxd, Rats on Film Pod. We'll be posting this list and all the future lists we make there. Let us know what your opinions about the Miyazaki movies are. Let us know what films you'd like to see us talk about in the future. And we'll be back soon to talk about more movies.
See ya.
Bye.